The story begins in a vast desert, where a lone child wanders aimlessly, chewing on something unsettling while searching for his mother, who is somewhere nearby. Meanwhile, a car speeds along a road that abruptly ends in the middle of the barren landscape. The driver steps out, leaving his vehicle behind, and continues on foot. Wyndham, a photographer, has come to capture the solar eclipse. After taking several shots, he realizes the day is fading and turns back toward his car. However, his path crosses with a young boy who appears lost and frightened. Wanting to help, Wyndham approaches, but the boy refuses his assistance, pointing toward where he last saw his parents before walking away. Hoping to guide the child home, Wyndham follows, but the boy harshly rejects him and disappears into the darkness. Now stranded with no clear way back, Wyndham has no choice but to stay. As night falls, he lies down, unable to sleep, his mind replaying the day's events. Suddenly, strange sounds break the silence. Following the noise, he discovers wooden stakes with ropes and hanging bottles that chime melodiously in the wind. In the distance, a canyon stretches before him, with a small wooden house nestled at the bottom. A woman wanders around it, singing softly. Wyndham calls out for help, but she vanishes inside without acknowledging him. He spots an iron ladder leading down the canyon and begins his descent. Halfway, the sturdy rungs end, replaced by a simple rope ladder. Carefully, he continues downward until he reaches the house. Knocking at the door yields no response, so he cautiously steps inside. A woman, standing by the stove, greets him with a calm demeanor, as if expecting him. She offers him a meal, and though he initially declines, she places a bowl of soup in front of him. Grateful but still seeking answers, Wyndham tells her about the boy and asks for water. The woman, introducing herself as Alina, suggests he rest until morning. Exhausted, he accepts. As he settles into the bed she provides, he notices her graceful movements and youthful beauty. At sunrise, Wyndham gathers his belongings and steps outside, determined to find a way home. But something is wrong. The rope ladder he used the previous day is gone, leaving no apparent way out of the canyon. The previous day, Wyndham had climbed down using the rope ladder, but now, it had vanished. Without it, reaching the iron rungs was impossible. Frustrated, he returns to the house and retrieves his camera, capturing images of the surroundings and the eerie symbols etched into the canyon walls. The atmosphere is unsettling, filled with an inexplicable sense of decay and death. As he lowers the camera, he notices Alina working on the roof. He asks her about the missing ladder, but she either doesn't understand or pretends not to. Her vague words suggest the presence of others, yet she offers no direct answers. Disheartened, Wyndham explores the canyon, periodically calling for help, but his cries are swallowed by the desolate landscape. Later, Alina asks Wyndham to remove his clothes so she can wash them, insisting it wouldn't be right for him to return home looking so unkempt. With no real alternative, he reluctantly agrees. That night, sleep evades him once more. He steps outside, searching again for an escape, but finds none. At dawn, he scours the house and eventually finds a hammer. Determined, he attempts to climb the canyon wall. Just as he begins his ascent, movement above catches his eye. Suddenly, a lifeless chicken is hurled down, startling him. He loses his grip and plummets. Darkness engulfs him. When he regains consciousness, a sharp pain radiates from his leg. His own hammer has wounded him. He cries out, and Alina rushes to his side. But when he questions her about the children he glimpsed on the cliffs, she offers no explanation. For days, Wyndham drifts in and out of fever, unable to separate reality from delirium. Shadows flicker at the edges of his vision, children, perhaps, but he cannot be sure. Eventually, his strength returns. Though limping, he forces himself outside and demands that Alina call to the children above, asking them to pull him out. She feigns confusion and instead offers him a place to stay, assuring him she will care for him. But Wyndham refuses. He doesn't need her help, he needs to go home, to return to his work. He shoves her aside, rejecting her kindness. Examining his injured leg, he realizes recovery will take far longer than he hoped. Just then, voices drift down from above. Looking up, he sees the boy appear again, holding a little girl by the hand. With cheerful voices, they ask how they can assist. When Wyndham explains that he needs to climb out, the boy assures him that he'll bring ropes and use a winch to pull him up. Before leaving, the boy poses an odd question, Wyndham's favorite color. Without thinking much of it, Wyndham responds, red, and urges them to hurry. Once they disappear, Wyndham checks his wallet, knowing he has no intention of returning for his other belongings. Then, a rope suddenly drops from above. The boy instructs him to tie himself securely, which Wyndham quickly does. As they begin pulling him up, relief washes over him, he's finally escaping. But halfway up, the ascent halts. Suspended over the canyon, Wyndham yells, attempting to climb on his own, but his strength fails him. He dangles helplessly under the brutal sun. Water drips onto his face, reviving him. Looking up, he sees the children laughing, spraying him with a hose. More figures gather at the edge of the canyon, children of various ages, their clothes an odd mix, clearly scavenged from different people. They jeer at him, their amusement growing. Suddenly, they start swinging the rope, slamming him against the rock walls. Desperately, he calls out for Alina. Below, he spots her shouting at the unruly children, but before he can react further, another impact knocks him unconscious. That night, Wyndham wakes up in bed, his body aching. He immediately tries to get up, but Alina questions where he intends to go. She finally reveals the truth: the children are orphans, surviving in the desert as best they can. Neither of them notices the figures above, silently watching as the windows of the house flicker with flames. The next morning, Wyndham watches Alina release a bird into the sky, envy creeping in at its effortless escape. Later, she presents him with a set of fresh clothes, acquired from some unknown source. Though he never asked for them, he can't deny feeling touched by her gesture. Time passes. One day, Wyndham starts a small garden at the bottom of the canyon. Occasionally, the children bring food and supplies, baffling him. There are no stores nearby, yet they always seem to have something. Their behavior remains unpredictable, sometimes offering gifts, sometimes taunting him. Alina, however, treats it all as normal. Slowly, Wyndham becomes more involved in daily life. He observes Alina, her quiet patience intriguing him. One evening, as he tries to ask her more questions, loud cries interrupt them. Alina warns him against going outside when the children act like this, but Wyndham ignores her and rushes out. A group of boys, dressed in bizarre outfits, surround the house. They mock him, pushing and hitting him before vanishing into the night. Furious, Wyndham demands answers from Alina. Who are these children? Why do they live here? And why does she remain in this strange place? But Alina stays calm, never admitting she is trapped. That night, she comes to him, and he welcomes her presence, craving human connection. More time passes. His garden begins to sprout. One day, the boy in the cap reappears, friendlier than before, and promises to bring him a soda. As Wyndham tends to his plants, his hands brush against something buried beneath the soil. He pulls out a wedding ring and a set of car keys. That evening, Alina shows him an old portrait of a woman she calls the first mother. Then, with quiet certainty, she confesses she is carrying his child. Wyndham is stunned. He never planned for this, never wanted to raise a child in this place, especially with someone he barely knows. He lashes out at Alina, but the truth remains, there is no escaping it. The next morning, he wakes to find his garden ravaged by birds. But Alina calmly helps him replant, and despite everything, Wyndham finds himself grateful. Slowly, life settles into a routine. Alina manages the house, while Wyndham regains strength in his injured leg. One day, the boy in the cap returns, brimming with curiosity. He bombards Wyndham with questions, eager to know more. Wyndham takes the opportunity to ask for help. Alina is expecting a child, and they will need a doctor. Wyndham asks the boy to bring him a rope and something heavy as a counterweight. He has a plan: to climb out and take both the boy and Alina to the city, where they can have a better life. The boy eagerly agrees, promising to help when no one else is around. However, before he can act, one of the older boys appears and takes him away. Later, Wyndham tells Alina that the boy is different from the others, smart, curious, and eager to learn. He wants to help him, and her as well. But Alina reacts strangely. She questions what exactly Wyndham is missing in this place. When he mentions freedom, she looks puzzled. No one is stopping him from doing anything, isn't that freedom? Wyndham describes the outside world, vast oceans, bustling cities, and something as simple as a cheeseburger. Alina doesn't know what that is, so he explains its ingredients. She listens but eventually repeats what her mother once told her: the outside world is nothing but a mirage, while everything here in the desert is real. Wyndham takes out his camera and shows her the photos from the day he arrived. She barely reacts to the images of the solar eclipse. Instead, what captivates her is a random picture taken inside his car, where music was playing in the background. That night, Wyndham is haunted by nightmares of distorted, laughing faces, children mocking someone. The next morning, a blood-curdling scream jolts him awake. Rushing outside, he sees a horrific sight: the boy in the cap, strung up like a crucifix over the canyon, suspended by wires. The others stand on the cliff, laughing like wild animals. Alina, seemingly in shock, mutters that brothers would never do such a thing. Her expression darkens, and she suddenly turns on Wyndham, accusing him of killing her son. Before he can react, she strikes him in the head with a wooden plank. When Wyndham regains consciousness, he finds himself locked in a cage. He pleads with Alina, but she has no intention of letting him go. She feeds him like an animal, while the children gather to watch him suffer. One day, he sees a girl standing on the canyon's edge, someone unfamiliar, someone not from this place. Whispering, he begs her to call for help. She nods in understanding, reassures him that she will return, and disappears. But soon after, Wyndham hears screams. The girl has been captured. From his cage, he watches helplessly as they drag her to the cliff and execute her before his eyes. Time passes. Wyndham remains trapped, forced to witness strange rituals performed by Alina, the children, and the brothers. One day, he suddenly changes his approach. He tells Alina that he wants to stay, to raise their child, to love her and make her his queen. He will teach their child everything he knows, dedicating himself fully to this place. But when he utters the word choice, Alina laughs. Choice? He never had one. He is nothing more than a seed carried by the wind, and this child is hers alone. He will stay in the cage until the baby is born. After that, nothing in the desert goes to waste. Finally, the day of birth arrives. Alina screams in pain while Wyndham paces inside his cage. She staggers toward him, desperate, begging for his help. This birth is unlike any before. Desperate, she releases him. Wyndham does everything he can to ease her pain as the children stand on the cliffs, watching. Then, amidst the agony, he sees it, a ladder descending from above. An escape. But Alina cries out, and he hesitates. He stays. At the very moment of the solar eclipse, the baby is born. Wyndham holds the newborn girl in his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. He kisses her forehead, feeling, for the first time, the joy of fatherhood. Alina pleads for the child, promising to protect her, to raise her until she becomes the new mother, fulfilling her purpose, just as Wyndham has now fulfilled his. In that instant, the boy sneaks up behind him. A knife slices through Wyndham's throat. As his body collapses, the boy watches in triumph. For the mother, he whispers. Later, Alina carefully gathers Wyndham's belongings, placing them in a chest. Then, she returns to the baby, cradling her gently. Everything will be fine, she promises. Meanwhile, in the yard, Wyndham's lifeless body slowly decays, the earth reclaiming him. Grass begins to sprout where he once lay. And with that, this unusual story comes to an end.